Joining us now is Michael Canaris. He's from the Institute of Pastoral Studies at Loyola University. Give us your impressions of the timing in terms of this vote and our potential new pope.
Yes, an unbelievable experience here. It was even those of us who watch it very closely, I was totally shocked. So I was actually in the car picking up my daughter and got the call about coming on and rushed home. We were not expecting this. I mean, many of us thought that with so much of the discussions about the referendum on Pope Francis's agenda that's unfolding right now, that perhaps it would take some time to coalesce around a candidate more than 3, 4, 5, 6 votes. And so many of us expected it to come tomorrow. But here we are, and it proves once again that there's no real factions in the church, that we're all on the same team, and that when it came to it, they came together quite quickly, actually.
Our previous guest made the point that if you are adhering to the Word of God, there will not be substantive changes in the doctrine from the Catholic Church, regardless of who the Pope is. There will be stylistic changes. I wonder your view on that.
Yeah, I would say that over the long and sort of circuitous route of the history of the church, there's certainly developments in doctrine that the way that we articulate the truths that are expressed in the gospel are always bound up by time and culture and context and place, and that changes as we move forward. For instance, we are the only Christians that have ever lived that have had to think about artificial intelligence. That's not something that they dealt with in the 19th century or the 5th century or the 2nd century. And so, of course, the gospel doesn't change. The call to conversion, the call to live out the truths of recognizing the dignity of every human person, that's constant and consistent. But how we do that in every era, that does unfold over time.
But to a degree, it's a bit like the U.S. Constitution, right? The words don't change, the interpretation can.
Yes, that's the central word, the interpretation. So what does it mean to live creative fidelity? What does it mean to live faithfully to the gospel, to the church, to our spiritual community and home? And what does it mean to do so in a number of different contexts and meanings and times and moments and spaces and conversations?
You talk about AI, but also social media. I mean, really, there's a drone flying over St. Peter's right now, bringing these images to people in a way that they really never got to see with such immediacy.
And how exactly right.
Yeah, go ahead. How does that impact people's connection?
Yeah, so we know that social media changes, that young people in particular will tell you that what was popular even in 2013 is different now. And so the media environment changes, even the movie. I mean, I've answered lots of questions about the movie, but it has raised the interest. This is probably the most watched conclave in history, not only because of social media or the movie, but also because Pope Francis, he was a master of gestures and images and spoke to the world, even to some who were outside the bounds of Christianity, of course, or those who were doubting or on the margins. And so he spoke to the world in very powerful ways, and people are interested in to see who can follow that. He's a tough act to follow, you know, that there will not be a second Pope Francis, even if this Pope chooses the name Francis II. But to how to build on that interest at this moment when the whole globe is focused on this. You're breaking in from whatever your previously scheduled shows were because people are interested.
And not only speaking to people, but really waving his finger at politicians all over the world, including our very own president. And that's something that goes back, of course, to Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II, who spoke out against communism. And Pope Francis spoke out against inhumanity.
Exactly right. I mean, for Pope Francis, and we'll see if the next pontiff has the same priorities. Of course, some will be different. But the idea of not centering and foregrounding migrants and the question of people on the move, when that is so characteristic of the world we live in. We live in an age of migration. More than 1 in 7 people on the planet are somehow on the move. And so, of course, a global church that speaks across geographical boundaries and continents and cultures will have to wrestle with that as just a phenomenon of life in the contemporary age.
We see that live picture from St. Peter's Square where the sun is just now setting over the place that we will soon learn the identity of the next pope, the next leader of more than 1 billion Catholics around the world. As we watch this crowd, Dina pointed it out earlier, the flags from people identifying their own heritage, flags from all over the world. At this moment in the Catholic Church. I wonder, as you look at this moment, do you think it will be somebody that has been talked about, or are you in the school of, well, if you're on the short list when you go in, you're still going to be on the list when you come out, just near the bottom?
Yeah, there's that famous saying in Rome that he who enters the conclave, a pope, comes out a cardinal, right? Everyone's heard that probably in the lead up to this. I would think that because of the speed with which they coalesced around a figure, of course, now I'll be proven wrong in the next few minutes, but my instinct is that it won't be a complete total shock. I think the idea was, if we had a conclave that went beyond Saturday and Sunday, and it was clear that they were at loggerheads between some of the leading candidates, then that's when a surprise and totally unforeseen person may emerge. So, but we never know, because what the pundits say the front runners were may not be who got the first votes the first time around. I remember reading recently, Jerry O'Connell is one of the great English-speaking Vatican journalists in the world, and he wrote a beautiful book on the last conclave in 2013, and said in the first round, 23 different people received votes. So that far supersedes any list, and so perhaps some of the cardinals had in their mind, because of the conversations in the days before, a candidate that we're not expecting, and so there could be a surprise. Yeah. I think that what I've seen and read and even heard what other people are saying just in these few minutes of the white smoke, that the two most likely candidates are probably Cardinal Parolin, the former Secretary of State, or Cardinal Tagle, as they were seen as really having the most votes potentially in those first few rounds, and so perhaps they coalesced around one or the other, but of course we don't know.
We will find out in minutes. Michael Canaris from the Institute of Pastoral Studies at Loyola University, we appreciate your expertise at this fascinating moment in the Church's history. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.